worked with clubs or worked with sports organisations, what sort of things you've been put in for? Any examples? Anybody wants to kick us off with that? Please say name and pitch in.
Simon is John Byrne, Leicestershire Rutland Sport.
Hi John, how you doing?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. Just to say that we've had some communication from Sport England indicating that they're going to push information to those unsuccessful applicants via to us as well, or give the clubs information about directing them towards us as an active partnership. Certainly on our end, we've got local funds or local funding and funds that we'll be directing those unsuccessful clubs to and organisations. The information from our patch is that the early part of last week there had been something like 47 applications. We've struggled to get an update on that this week, but I'm assuming that's because they've been overwhelmed and they're working through the application. So, but yeah, I think from our perspective, it's good news that there seems to be a better connectivity with Sport England colleagues, making sure that those unsuccessful bids are going to get additional help through active partnerships, and we're certainly in Leicester and Rutland keen to be able to do that where we can.
Yeah, thanks. I think there's also the directions into some governing bodies that are, RFU, for example, they've got loans that can help if there are, clubs in that position. I think we've got some sort of the conversations we've had around the country about what clubs are putting in for, I think has been quite varied. Certainly if there's direct loss that, a club has bought stuff in that they're losing, you're losing money on. But whether Sport England will look on events that are used to raise funds that can support the club through the rest of the year, I'm not sure whether that's been seen particularly positively. I don't know, but it's really the direct loss in this short period of time. Any examples of where people have specifically supported clubs or sports organisations? I do know of a regional governing body that's also put in, that's lost money over regional competition, etc. Any other examples?
We've had Andreas from British Wrestling in the chat just say no Michael video, but we've tried to make initial contacts with local councils, but receiving no contact, no emails or calls at the moment.
I think it might be difficult to, if people are furloughed or organisations are closed, to actually make contact with people, etc. Yeah. Any other examples of? I know we had last time some cricket clubs that were looking at support.
Hi Simon, it's Aaron from Archery.
Oh, Aaron, how you doing?
I'm all right, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, good. Surviving.
Yeah.
In house arrest.
I know that we've had 4 clubs that have received funding from Sport England.
Right.
I only know of one name of those clubs because he actually came to me and let me know. I asked him what it was for, and he said loss of income from a tournament that they were planning to run. Loss of income from a beginner's course, and then non-renewing members, and they received just under £2,500.
Okay.
So that's all we know at the moment. We haven't heard anything else.
So they've actually had the approval gone through and were they earlier submitters or were they?
He
got an idea of the turnaround.
Yeah, he told me this on the 9th of April, so I can't remember when it launched, but obviously that's quite early on in the process. So
yeah, that's really good, and that's a nice sort of example of if they're funding that, then that gives some clear sort of guidance to organisations on what could be funding. Any other examples of where clubs have been supported in putting in? I know a number of cricket clubs have put in that they're not able to run and they've already bought stock, etc., and that might go off. I think then there's a debate about beer going off in 2 months, etc., and lager not going off for a longer time, but let's not get into that debate too much of a difference in beer and lager. Any other examples that we've got of organisations that have put in?
We've had sorry to interrupt, carry on.
No, carry on, Natalie.
So just Jane from BMC, she said focusing on supporting our clubs with facilities by accessing the small business support for mountaineering huts / cottages and bunkhouses. So haven't directly supported clubs with Sport England grants yet, staying hopeful that there'll be still some funding left after government funding options have been exhausted. So yeah, it's which one you go for, because obviously some of those different pots are relevant for different organisations, aren't they?
So that's, Jane, that's the government funding element that you've gone for, is it?
Hi, yes, it is. A lot of the clubs local authorities have got rateable values such that they will be eligible for the funding that's available. Some of them have already received that cash into their bank accounts. Others are at various points with either having had confirmation from the councils or having put in application. It's varying an awful lot across the country. Even getting to Scotland, because it's a different situation up there again. So yeah, that's where the focus has been so far. Is fortunately for most mountaineering clubs, there won't be a massive impact financially. The huts side of it, the accommodation side of it, is the bit that's causing us the concern. So that's where we're focusing our efforts so far.
So that's the business rates they've got back, and the grants related to the business rates.
Yeah, most of the huts are such that they receive business rate support anyway.
Right.
And it's the £10,000 for rateable values. It differs between England and Wales again, but it's about under £15,000 rateable value.
Right. And so they've got the grants that are related to those as well through?
Yes.
Wow, that's impressive. I know there's a lot of hold up on the business loan side of things, which is more bank related than government related, I think.
Yeah, none of them have gone down the business loan route as it stands.
Yeah. Which in a lot of ways is kind of sensible if you don't need the cash. You know, I think the loans are really about trying to get some cash flow back into the organisation, isn't it?
Yeah. And
okay,
of course, there's that great unknown as to how long this is going to last for. But the research that we've done with our club so far is that most of them are in a fairly decent state with reserves to cover costings that they may come up against. But
I think we'll probably touch on that a little bit later when it comes to future planning around.
Let's not go there yet.
Cash reserves. Yeah, that comes up quite a lot about clubs that haven't got cash reserves, and those that have are reluctant to use it, and we're saying, well, this is your rainy day. This is where you need your cash reserves really to keep things rolling. Whether you get it back again is another critical. Sorry, somebody else was going to pitch in as well on funding as well, I think.
Yeah, hi Simon. It's Bruce from Active Cumbria. How are you? All right?
Oh, hi Bruce.
Yeah, just from our perspective, and I remember off the second debate that we had, a colleague from golf was intimating that many of their clubs it was too early to say what support they really felt they needed. And I think that's been echoed within some recent communications that we've had. We've communicated out to all our sports clubs, organisations and physical activity providers, and we've had diddly squat from responses back to that. We're actually working with one organisation on one of their applications to Sport England, but we were quite surprised at that lack of response. But again, maybe is that just an indication that it's perhaps still too early for them to know. We are some of the bigger clubs, particularly Keswick Rugby Club, that over this course of perhaps 2 months would have generated approximately £140,000 from a beer festival, staging a couple of county final rugby matches, and hosting a big fun run. So we're aware of where there are situations, but as I say, the amount of contact now, whether or not it's the fact that NGBs are having that early connectivity and are having that, certainly from a partnership perspective, we haven't seen that kind of response that we might have, but not this time round.
Yeah, I mean, we put together, and we've stuck it on the link that I sent through with the email. We've put together a link to the governing body reference, and there is a lot of information out there. And I think governing bodies are trying to really support their clubs quite a lot. I think there's sort of 2 or 3 groups of clubs. There's some that are still in denial and don't know what to do, There's some that that have locked things down really quickly, etc. There's some like Jay mentioned with mountaineering clubs, they have little overhead, so actually to close down, unless they've got staff, if their only outgoings is paying for facilities, etc., it's quite easy to close the club down. So I think whether they are looking at just maintaining their core membership, and that's what the Stay Connected discussion is really about. It's unclear. I think governing bodies have done a really, really good job. I think the question I'm asking governing bodies now is, okay, you've put that information out there. It's quite a static information on a website. Do they now need a conversation about their specific needs about growing back out of this, or planning about this, which I think we'll touch on a little bit more. But I think a lot of clubs have, because they have low cost or they're just hiring facilities, it's quite easy to close it down. And so actually they maybe don't think that they need that support. I don't know whether anybody else, I don't know whether you've picked up that at all in Leicester and Rutland, John, at all, whether you've picked up what people are needing and whether people are closing down quite quickly.
I think you've already covered it, probably, Simon. But yeah, we're discovering, maybe slightly different from Bruce. We're getting some contacts. We're actually being proactive in following those organisations and clubs in the areas of greatest need to try and give them a different type of support, because maybe they've got less sophisticated support mechanisms. So we're just literally before this call, we're meeting with Street Games and Sported to agree a priority list to try and engage those areas, particularly those that are dealing with vulnerable young people. So I think it's something that's been spoke about on this platform before, but we've got a sort of 5-step process on our website where we're directing people to where we think that will take them their avenue of support. So some of our sports clubs that are in effect most social enterprises, tapping them into government stuff. We're looking at all the local funding. So yeah, it's a mixed bag. Sorry, I'm not adding much to the discussion, but it's a very mixed bag. We've got businesses that are based on triathlon that their whole summer program's been wiped out. Their position is such that they're in desperate need, and we're trying to work with British Triathlon and other sources of funding to see how we can keep them afloat. Otherwise, we lose another business that's quite a significant or a developing business, should I say. So there's a whole mixed bag. But what we're discovering is that the phone's not ringing off the hook. It's whether people are finding their own way to these funds or not. At this stage, we're looking at where do we fill the gap, sort of type thing. I don't know if anybody else has heard, but
we're doing some direct support with Oxfordshire, which Natty and I worked on quite a bit, and the well-organised, articulate middle-class clubs are sorted. And I think you're absolutely right. It's the groups that are hard to engage with that actually, are the ones that are not bubbling to the top in terms of asking for support and help, probably because they don't know the network, or they're thinking that they don't deserve it, or something like that. And I think that's for me the big challenge, is those smaller groups that are, in some cases reasonable enterprises or small enterprises that are not making connection, and that's where I think, the little groups that really need support don't appear to be bubbling to the top and asking for support.
Hi, Simon.
Hi, go on.
Hi, Simon. It's Chris from Yorkshire Sport Foundation. I think we're pretty much in the same boat as John, where I don't think our phones are ringing off the hook just yet. Obviously, we're supporting our local authorities. Obviously, we've got some LDP areas, so we're supporting that. But I think for us, we're just being a central of information. So our team is sort of trying to collate as much funding information into a central point. We've obviously just released our sort of club newsletter around our sort of what we're calling a hotline, in terms of trying to capture that sort of information at a central point. But I think, again, we're just sort of linking up with like Street Games, NGBs. From conversations with NGBs, their sort of regional staff are looking like they're going to get furloughed at some point. So that's where us as an active partnership are sort of just gearing ourselves up in terms of potentially picking up that sort of loss in workforce. But at this moment in time, I think quite a lot of them are going through to the NGBs in terms of the established ones. And I think quite a lot of the sort of non-established ones who are, like you said, run off the mill, they sort of get a by day, they sort of don't, I'm not sure if they know where to go to in terms of getting that support to start with, which is where we're sort of trying to support local authorities to try and do that. And I think I know there's some local authorities here where they're sort of being moved out of their department, so some of their sports staff might not be covering the sporting sector anymore. They may be covering like the business sector and stuff like that. So I think there's just a little bit still of transition of where that support is for us.
Yeah, I sense that the clubs that were fragile or were, run on a shoestring, they're the ones that are really going to suffer. And will they be able to get back going again, particularly if they've got, casual or particular, interest groups or areas. I think that's the challenge of getting those. Are there any examples where really good examples about staying connected? How clubs have stayed connected with their members? Obviously, we've seen loads of stuff on of gym and football and coaches running Zoom coaching sessions. I would say there was an example in swimming where somebody put out the Zoom link on social media and it got hacked, and various pornographic people joined the Zoom conversation. So I think there's a little bit around, just be careful about how you're circulating those things. Well, that's a little bit naive in that sense. But any examples of where clubs or organisations have, kept their membership together? I know there's issues about whether they charge a basic membership fee during the period, and that seems to be well accepted. But not the mass normal, fees to pay for facilities and things like that. Any really good examples that people have got around clubs or organisations that have stayed connected? And I'm really conscious about, some of those young people's groups, etc., where the connection with the sports club or the sports activity, and mention street games, etc., is really quite vital to their lives, let alone just taking part in sport. Any examples of where people have clubs and organisations have done that and still say?
Simon, it's not our example, John Byrne, unless you're in Rutland. I think it's netball. So if there's anybody else on from netball here, then I'll let them take the glory for this. But netball done a walking netball session through Zoom I think it was last weekend, and they had 90 people signed up to that across the region. I believe it was a regional exercise here in East Midlands. So I think that was a cracking example. I've not seen, I don't know if it's been recorded or whatever, but and I'm not quite sure of the content of how they've done it, but I just picked it up yesterday.
So what, it'd be some long passes across the garden walls?
It could well have been.
Yeah. Oh, that's good.
Chris at Yorkshire Sport again. So we've just obviously been in touch with Sport England, and we've been obviously given a bit of flexibility with our satellite club programme to sort of support some of those satellite clubs. So we've sort of released a small pot of funding to support clubs to find a little bit of money to sort of begin to put on some virtually active sessions, as you've already alluded to, about some fitness people doing some like HIIT sessions and things like that, who are already established within their community or within their club members through their Facebook, doing Facebook Live. And then obviously we are directing people to something that we've set up on our website, which is like a virtual activity finder. So again, that's open to all. The satellite club funding is obviously targeted at the ones who are existing satellite clubs or ones that our development officers are working with throughout the period, what would have been a satellite club. And then obviously through some of the other work that's happening, so we've got like an active DERM project. So our active DERM manager are working with community champions to identify sort of well-known community leaders in there who are doing things. So we've been quite fortunate. We've got Terry Harper, who's sort of well known in boxing, and she's sort of doing some like Zooms and things like that to sort of target those sort of people, and then obviously still using our networks and things like that to sort of connect them in as well, where traditionally a lot of sport organisations go to them and to support them in their organisations, things like the disability sort of side of it all. where they tend to get a lot of sports going to them. So it's sort of a bit of a transition of trying to support them, getting them online. I think the only downside for all that is sort of the technology element. Again, it's assuming that everyone's got a laptop or some sort of technology device to get on there to obviously take part. So, like I said, we're sort of trying to weigh the pros and cons of everything at the moment. So, but at the moment, it's going really well, and I think we've had over sort of 33 applications successful.
I was going to say, what was your sort of? Have you got any stats on number of hits on that particular area and responses?
At this moment in time, no. We've had about, I can just tell you, we've sort of funded about 33 sort of clubs across South and West Yorkshire. Obviously, I'm sure there's more still coming in and being developed across the areas. Obviously, part of that is obviously we're asking for some sort of monitoring in terms of some stats and figures, to try and capture that as well. But obviously, we're at the early stages at the moment.
I know Sport Birmingham put a sort of activity finder, which is a social activity finder. I'm aware of clubs that run quiz nights and things like that to keep people engaged on a Saturday night, curry nights in and things like that. And so it's those sort of different things. But I think you're right. I think I'm really concerned that those people that haven't got a laptop, haven't got that connectivity, and that's probably why we're not hearing from them, because they're not able to connect to find out the information to then get involved, to then access the information that there is. And I think that's the real challenge about trying to see whether that network, which was a word of mouth and physical contact, for want of a better phrase, or physical, whether that, how is that being addressed without breaking sort of social distancing and all that sort of thing. And I think that seems to be the challenge. But clubs and formal clubs, I think, seem to be staying connected quite effectively with their club members. But I think, again, it's back to the theme of today, which is what about those that are not connected and not able? And I think it's really coming up with ways and means of getting connected in some way. And I just wondered if there was any examples of where that's happened.
Simon, I've got an example from Active Notts and Active Derbyshire. So I'm Jade. I guess, and I wonder whether part of that is that because it's not on social media, we don't know about it. So it was in one of the communities in Nottingham City. They normally have at the community centre a Friday morning Zumba. So the instructor literally just took her music to the corner of the street. The police were involved, the local residents, and they were just dancing in their front gardens. And I guess the only reason we're aware of that is because we're connected over social media. Isn't something that I guess they've gone out of their way to tell us about. So whether there's other examples of that out in communities as well.
I do know one of my members of staff, she lives in a flat actually, and she looks over a cul-de-sac, and one person got out a big projector and projected onto their garage door a film on Saturday night. And all the local people came out with their little deck chairs and whatever chairs and sat suitably far apart and watched the film on a Saturday night, which was quite good. But I think it's that there seems to be local community stuff, and the hand clapping on Thursday night proves that, I think. But it's how are we getting to the people that are really needing it, and I think that's the challenge over these next few weeks, that the people that maybe we're not connecting with the people that really do need that support.
A few comments in the chat box from Ryan at Snow Sport, having another virtual club drop in and actually going to be signposting clubs to active partnership support. And we've got Daniel Bromley from Kent, beginning online satellite clubs on existing group social media pages. Initially, boxing sessions have been well received. So that sounds good.
Super. I want to just moving on a little bit, unless anybody else has got any other examples they want to throw in the chat box or just speak. But if we're into a sort of three-stage process of battening down the hatches, preservation, sort ourselves out, then looking at planning for the future, and then actually delivery. I don't think, well, we're into elements of delivery, which is the social stuff we've just discussed. But I think it's looking at, are people thinking about the future? And I've sort of split that into two areas, really. And I go back to my days when I was CEO of basketball and took over. Basketball was not in a great state and could have made it go bust. And actually, what I said to the board was, what we could do with is a year off so we can sort everything out and then start again. But sport never stops. And actually, we've got a period now of, well, at least 3 weeks, and I think probably a little bit more, around actually, is there a chance here to look at fundamental issues around organisations and whether there's issues around planning that could be done in this downtime rather, that actually can look at improving the organisation as such, as well as then looking at imaginative approaches that can attack the £55 million pot, which is looking at growing out of this in some way. And the support that we've sort of given a chair, Westland Swimming, and the things we're putting together with clubs in West Mids is to look at their constitution, looking at their committee structure, looking at whether they've got enough volunteers, and also looking at their finance and whether they actually need to look at fundamentally changing how they generate money and building up a cash reserve to deal with a situation like this. But I think I rambled on LinkedIn a few times about my concern is that there'll be loads of fit, healthy people released into activity, and there maybe won't be the mature people of a older age who'll be locked down for a little bit longer, who are the volunteers, officials, coaches, etc. And there might well be a real difference. So is this an opportunity for organisations to look at a different volunteer workforce? Is there opportunity to train them during this downside? Any examples of where that sort of thinking? I know when we were doing we had a webinar with Oxfordshire clubs, and one club there is saying, well, actually, we're looking fundamentally at our committee structure because we've got a chance to do it because there's nothing else to do. So any thoughts on that? Any examples of where clubs or organisations are looking at the long-term future of their organisation rather than the short-term battening down the hatches, dealing with the now? Any things where people are looking at the long-term future at all?
Hi Simon, it's Aaron from Archery again.
Hi Aaron.
We've been doing this over the last week. From an organisation point of view, that we immediately thought, brilliant, we can get all this stuff done, and then we furloughed 10 staff. So that's put a little bit
counterproductive. That, I think.
Yeah, just a little bit, but unfortunately, that's what we have to do. We're still planning on trying to get some of those. It's amazing, really, because the IT digital revolution that we're all trying to do came much quicker with a virus. So and obviously we wanted to carry that on. Things like open data and all those kind of things, we desperately want to get those done and dusted, so when we come out of this, we don't have to worry too much about those things. The age demographics for us as archery is obviously, very well what our age demographic is like.
Mature is a polite way of putting it, I think.
Yeah, just a bit. And if those types of people, as you said, are still under some kind of lockdown, even though the younger elements of us are allowed to skip freely down the streets, then our judges, our tournament.
I have an image now, Aaron, but I won't.
Sorry about that. The judges, the tournament organisers, just general club volunteers as well. As you said, won't necessarily be allowed out.
Or have the fear of going out, I think, Aaron.
Well, yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. And I have seen some of your LinkedIn posts, so there's a little plus. Somebody's reading them. My concerns are the same as yours as well, in terms of going out and actually, we can deliver our club stuff, but we can't necessarily deliver anything to new participants because we just don't have the people. And for us as a sport where we get our new people in the summer, that's a massive concern for us. We lose 15,000 members every year, and the clubs replace them in the summer. So if they're not replaced in the summer, we're heading into a new membership year come October, when we could be back down to a membership level of 10 years ago, and all that work of 10, has just evaporated.
So I think, I mean, the question, and again, I look at regional swimming in the West Midlands, and the majority of people that have got the stopwatches or whatever, and in the the white shirts at the end of the pool, are in excess of 60 in age. And my concern is, yes, we'll want loads of competitions, but will there be the judges and things? Is there something that can be done, either within the club level or at regional county level within governing bodies and all that looks at maybe a way of generating some volunteers that start on the pathway of volunteering? They might not complete them, because obviously if you're judging in archery or swimming or refereeing a football game, you've got to actually have the practical experience. But is there something that could be done that actually looks at generating those new volunteers? And as well, that's within clubs as well, I think. Is there a way of actually recruiting volunteers through this stage? And also, I think, looking at it from a Club Matters point of view, we started to push in Club Matters around legal structure, and whether clubs are membership based or they're limited by guarantee or charitable or whatever. And is that an opportunity now for clubs to look at that fundamentally, as well as the people that are within their organisation? Swimming are keen to look at making sure that all their clubs are child protection compliant and got all the welfare officers and all that sort of thing in place, and have a chance to do that now, have a chance to do that paperwork that they didn't before. So I'm wondering whether active partnerships or sports organisations, governing bodies, are actually moving into that phase of not wasting this time in terms of the structuring of their clubs. And is that being thought about or not considered yet?
Chris from Yorkshire Sport Foundation again. So we're currently working with CPSU and the NSPCC in terms of safeguarding, and sort of seeing how we can potentially do that virtually. The only concern we have with that is quite a lot of people tend to get a lot more being in a classroom and
Sure.
sitting with other people that are from different organisations, and that story sharing. So we're sort of just working around how we get that and still get that sort of really good sort of like golden nugget sort of catch to that. At this moment,
sorry to interrupt. The SPC workshop is now virtual. It's now online. It's 2.5 hours through UK Coaching, etc. We've run a couple. We actually put on one week on Sunday. We advertised it last Wednesday. It was full up by Monday. So there's an appetite for it. But I agree with you that as a safeguarding tutor, that face-to-face bit and answering particular questions is really quite crucial. I think the same is looking at time to listen. Time to listen isn't a virtual workshop yet, but I think it's seriously being thought about. Sorry.
Can I comment from Active Oxfordshire? You've been hearing me a lot recently. Hi, everybody. My take on the reactivation is we need to be really disciplined about being strategic and using all the bad things that are coming out of this crisis for good, for change. So I think what's happening around the relief fund is really good, but it's a first into the trough type approach, and we shouldn't adopt that with reactivation. And I think active partnerships and governing bodies need to learn from this crisis, and that is the vital role sport and physical activity plays in our life. So I think the community sports sector in Oxfordshire is quite resilient, and all the data coming out sporting at the moment is showing that people who tend to occupy clubs are finding ways to keep active, but their role and their role in the place in the community has never been as massively highlighted as before. So I think we've got to use that. But we've also, as you know, I think, Simon, we've got a network now of 450 community organisations dealing with the crisis, the voluntary sector.
Yeah.
So if clubs and sport realise the role they can play in not just sorting out this crisis, but in the future, and we actually learn to work together, and do things differently, you know, this is a bit of a one-off opportunity. And, you know, for me, our focus as an active partnership has to be on the key workers, this neglected group of people that are all of a sudden our saviours. And we've got to be focusing on getting them back into activity and giving them new habits. And if we can lock them into clubs and into facilities like they've never been locked in before, that's great. But if sport just goes back to looking after itself and being territorial, I think we'll have missed a big trick.
Well, there's 750,000 volunteers that are potentially there that could
absolutely
that could be available. Are you implying, Paul, by any chance that maybe the role of a sports club within its community is being undervalued?
It's certainly been undervalued, and we've got some really good examples in Oxfordshire, as you know, of clubs playing a real big part now in, you know, food distribution, for example. There is food parcels going out in the leafy glades of Oxfordshire all over the place, who are providing runners to pharmacists, you know, cycling clubs, you know, doing their piece. So all of a sudden, the role and value of sports clubs and sport, you know, is so obvious, isn't it, to everybody? And you've got the CMO standing up at a daily conference saying exercise is good for you, physical activity is important.
Every day.
So clubs
Clubs
grasp that, and also, you know, they need to be open to wider groups in our society. We've got a wonderful opportunity, I think, and we just need to work together and not everybody charge after the money or do their own things like sport has always done since I was a lad, you know.
So did it split down into two things then? Did it split down into actually looking at the activity side of the club? But I'm also keen to find out whether there's an opportunity now to look at the organisation of and the structure of a club based on its raison d'etre, based on its, you know, its actual role. And I think, you know, in knowing sports clubs fairly well, I sense that there's still quite a bit of sorting out to be done. They're very operationally led, and maybe actually this is an opportunity for them to look at a recruitment of a new volunteer workforce, but also looking at what's their role within the community and checking that. So is there an opportunity here to actually get clubs to look at themselves a little bit, where they're not having to worry about getting the kit cleaned for Saturday afternoon?
Simon, it's Aaron again. I totally agree that, and we've put together a plan of webinars over the next couple of weeks, including Club Matters ones. We've got 3, I think, booked in through you guys. And the club.
Have we paid you for that advert, Aaron? I don't know whether we are.
I'm hoping so. Yeah. Here's some more money you can give me. The leadership teams one, I think for us is really key. We were going to run the club structures one down in Guildford a couple of weeks ago, and we didn't. We changed it to club the leadership teams, and I think that's a really good starting point for those clubs to think about their structure and how they're managed, and even going on to their finances, going back to something you said earlier as well, in terms of, you know, the clubs are bringing their fees from their membership fees, but then go out and also do beginners courses and things like that, brings in the other money. All of that's just dropped off a cliff, and they're left with the money that they come from their members only. And that isn't, obviously they're not potentially not paying for stuff at the moment, but they will have to, and you know, they will have to pay for outdoor venues, indoor venues when we get to the winter, which will come around pretty quick, and they won't have the money to do it because their structure and the way that they're financially structured as well isn't up to scratch. And that's my big worry for the sport I work in. The sport I play and the sport I am a chairman of and stuff like that, for hockey is fine. You know, we finished, the season wasn't finished, but all of our monies had come in from membership. We paid everything. The school shut down. There was nothing more to pay. That's it. End of season. Let's hopefully, you know, September we restart again. But for summer sports, where
very different,
where they are reliant on bringing in extra income through tournaments or beginners courses or whatever it may be, they're just not set up for it, and it's trying to get them to think about that and change their mindset. But you're right, in the conversation is perfect opportunity to open up and say, look, you're in a great position now to offer something quite unique and also to vary different parts of the population.
I mean, I chair a hockey club as well, and I think they ended up with 2 games being cancelled, and 2 of the first team asked for a rebate, and I think the chair of the men's section replied to them with 2 words, but that's another matter altogether, I think. Nat, could you put the link to the Club Matters stuff into the chat box?
Yeah, no problem. Right at the top, I've already put the kind of new almost FAQs we put together around supporting clubs in getting online and becoming virtual. And at the bottom, just right now, I'll put the kind of link to book as well, because you can actually just go to the Club Matters website now and just book the workshop online. So I'll include all of that stuff, and obviously just shout if you've got any problems. Yeah,
we're running two ways. One, if an organisation wishes to organise, similar to Aaron and archery and gymnastics, are coming with a load, or we're running open ones where people from any part of the country or any part of the world, to be honest, can access in. But those are quite limited to about 12 people. Any examples of where people are supporting clubs, organisations to restructure themselves, or are they starting now to think about reactivation and getting back into the world of participation at all?
I've just got a quick comment here from Nick before we move on, Simon. He's just mentioned another, Nick from Get Berkshire Active. There's another threat to clubs that we need to be aware of. The economy is shrinking drastically, unemployment is climbing, and income levels are likely to be depressed for a long time. This will have an effect on people's spending power and the size of the sport market, and ultimately their ability to pay club gym activity session fees. Sport and physical activity is not often seen as essential spend and is one of the first things people cut back on. This is a threat we all need to be prepared, and adapt to almost when we go back. And what I keep saying to people is we're not going to go back to the same thing, are we? So it's preparing for kind of what that looks like, and it's going to be different.
Any of the requests coming through from clubs about specific need? I know I can refer to the swimming clubs in the West Midlands. Some are actually thinking about what their programme looks like from September, and they're starting to plan that in. With a moving feast of when they start back, which could be in July, which could be in November. They're moving that sort of scenarios around a bit. Any examples of where clubs are looking at that planning, or are they not ready for planning yet? Or still some looking at just dealing with the now? Any comments or thoughts? Yeah, no, good comment, thank you. And what's the sort of feeling about what organisations are needing, what support are they needing once they move from the initial help, we need to deal with the member of staff or the clubhouse or keeping the participants engaged? Any things that people are thinking about for the 55 million, because that's obviously significantly more, and imaginative ways of using that. And I think I take Paul's comment that actually, how do we engage with that massive volunteer workforce that just appeared in 5 minutes to help a fantastic cause, and how can we maybe offer something into that? Any imaginative, because I think we're going to have to come up with some imaginative approach to make sure that is really maximised at all. Any observations or thoughts?
Simon, sorry, carry on.
No, Simon, it's John Byrne, listening on Rutland Sport again. I suppose an observation rather than thoughts, and I haven't got the answer to this one, but like we've identified 750,000 NHS volunteers, and we've already referenced that. I think one of the biggest challenges is how does the sector prepare itself to present itself in a way around mental health? And I think we do that intrinsically, but I think we need to be much more explicit. And I think this period of time is going to is leading to increases in instances of mental health. But I think the repercussions around mental health are going to last much further. And I think sport's a hugely valuable tool in playing a huge part in that solution. We need, as a sector, and a joined up way, trying to present the message of the power of sport to be able to contribute to that challenge for the population, alongside all those things about the economy and unemployment, etc. A golden thread there is for our sector to, in a joined up way, to demonstrate its value to support people's resilience and mental health. It sounds a bit sort of not satirical, what's the word? A bit sort of idealistic, but I think the sector does this in parts, but I genuinely think that this is it's going to be one of our biggest challenges going forward for the population at large. I don't have the answers. Apologies. I'm raising it as an observation more than anything.
Yeah, there's some stuff coming out of Italy around significant issues around mental health, particularly in apartments, flats. That a big issue, and you can see the relationship with that with the UK absolutely completely. And they're seeing the role of Serie A as a critical factor, just by the fact that it's going to be on the television. They actually see the importance of I'm not a fan of the behind closed doors bit, but the role that football can play in actually, relieving stress and, even just watching it on the television. There were a couple of examples ago. I know somebody who's over 70 who, for some reason, is a fan of West Bromwich Albion. I'm not quite sure. I think he must have lost his brain at some point. But he's had a phone call from the club on he's a season ticket holder. He's had a phone call on 3 occasions now. So how are you? How are you doing? All that sort of thing, which I think, is really, really good. But he's actually saying, do you know what? I'm not sure whether I'm going to go back. Not because of the football, but do I want to be in a crowd of 25,000 when, I'm in a really, a targeted group that is, potentially up to more, a recatching of the virus, etc. So I think there's some real challenges in there about the stepping out bit, as well as what role could we play and how can we play that where there are volunteers at home. And I think that's a sort of we need to get our brains together to do that and put the case forward, as you say, John and Paul. I think that's the bit that needs some collective thinking, because otherwise I think the infrastructure is not going to be there, and we could really say sport and physical activity has got a massive role to play in that. But it's how do we coordinate that together? And it's very difficult to get case studies together when you're in lockdown, really. Any other thoughts, observations at all?
We are currently on the back of what Sport England's gone and done as well in terms of tracking behaviour change throughout this period of time. So obviously I know, people are seeing more people out on the streets and obviously complying with social distancing. But, there are more runners out there are more people doing activity, and it's sort of, we're just trying to track whether, why that is, and whether because of this virus, is that because there is a change in behaviour, or is it actually we're just seeing the people that would have been inside a gym or inside a club or inside XYZ that you wouldn't see on a normal basis, but parks are getting full with people, runners and things like that. So we're just trying to see whether there is a significance there, and then how can we then work with those behaviours to then obviously out of this period to tap into that and sort of shift them into the clubs. So where people might say there's a lack of new membership throughout this period, that hopefully out of this period that there'll be a surge of memberships because people are wanting to do more because they've actually had that opportunity to do it, opposed to not.
Yeah, essentially, I think the Sporting stuff is saying, look, those people that were inactive are still inactive, are still couch potatoes, and those that are active are becoming more active. But I think there's 1 or 2 things from a couple of governing bodies that those that are in performance programs are actually getting less active. So there's a sort of an average bit. I think the challenge is transferring that informal participation that's going on now into some formal activity, into some structured club activity. And I think the research that we did way back with Sportivate indicated that people like that individual activity, particularly women and girls, but at some point they wanted to move into a social grouping or a club or a group activity. So I think that's the bit that we've maybe got to encompass or embrace in some way. But how do we get the the people as well as the participants. And I'm conscious that, you know, we're looking at participation, but also the people are going to help run and organise those things, you know, as and when we grow out of this in some way, shape or form. And that, I think, needs some collective thinking. I don't know whether people are there yet, or whether people are still dealing with the now. I don't know whether people are managed or get the feel that people are looking at when things do become easier. Certainly the press are pushing government to come up with a plan, but I think that's not forthcoming yet. Then any observations or thoughts, or any governing bodies that are getting into that area of work yet? I'm conscious that a number of governing bodies have furloughed a lot of their development staff, which I think philosophically for me is counterproductive. Any observations at all? Okay. Well, I think we're sort of coming to the hour bit, and obviously, thank you very much for coming on again and having a debate. I don't know whether we've got anywhere with it, but hopefully people have found it useful just to see that other people are deep in it as well, and trying to come up with approaches and trying to engage with people. I found it interesting to listen to the governing bodies and active partnerships that, you know, are doing the same thing, and looking at trying to engage with those that are sometimes challenging to engage with, but also helping organisations keep their infrastructure together. We're intending to run another one next week, but if there's any specific topics, please let myself or Natalie, etc. know, and we'll stick that on. The other thing we're thinking, and I'd welcome people's views in the chat box, whether they think this is useful or not. We're looking at whether we put on a particular Club Matters workshop at this time, or whether we look at, you know, some specific areas like how to run a virtual classroom, or how to run a virtual meeting, or something like that it gets into a little bit of training. I'd welcome people if they just want to stick into the chat box, whether that would be useful for the Friday lunchtime chat. We're trying to keep it to an hour, so it's you know, it's not impinging too much on your 15 million Zoom, Teams, go-to meetings, etc. I had somebody ring me on the phone and say, "Oh, I just had to ring somebody on the phone because I'm so bloody fed up of Zoom meetings," which is quite ironic. And yeah, these things are for phoning as well. But yeah, remember those days. But if you've got any ideas, just whack them in. Thanks very much for your contributions. I hope you found it useful. But it's whether we move this on from a debate into actually looking at some active planning, or whether we look at specific training. So I'd welcome views if you want to do that now, because I know you won't do it over the weekend because you've got to go to the pub and the cinema and the restaurant as well over the weekend. So if you'd like to put those in, that'd be really, really useful. And I will do the adverts that we've sent that link through on the email, where you've got links to Club Matters workshops. We do specific services for organisations, and also stuff around our education and isolation workshops that we're doing virtually that actually are filling up. Say our safeguarding workshops are pretty much full up, pretty and we've filled up on one or two other education courses, and we're working on some stuff for coaches that will be virtual as well pretty soon. So if there's any, you know, support or help or ideas in this time, then please let us know. But so I've rambled enough to give you time to put anything in the chat box. If there are any questions now before we finish, then please whack them through and we can have a discussion now. Is there anything coming through, Natalie, at all?
No, just lots of thank yous, really. So no, just keep a lookout for the next ones, really, and we'll follow up with you all.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, folks. Enjoy whatever you're watching on Netflix, YouTube, Amazon, whatever. BBC, I think there's also programs on there. But thank you very much, folks. And any imaginative thoughts, I think, feed them into the network, and that'd be great. And have a lovely weekend. Thanks a lot,
everyone.
Folks.
Bye.